Hey everyone, welcome to today's live lesson. So this is a lesson that we do pretty much once a month where I want to interact with all of you. I want to take your questions and you can ask me anything when it comes to learning English. You can ask me about vocabulary, pronunciation, grammar. You can even ask some personal questions if you have questions that you want to know more about me. And in case you don't know about me, my name is Wes and this is Interactive English, and our channel is all about trying to help learners practice and improve their English skills, and we make interactive lessons so that it's not just passive learning, that you're just watching a video. We try to make it more active learning and get you engaged and have you answer questions, have you write comments. And this is another way for us to do that, to have these live lessons and be able to talk with all of you directly. So just want to give some quick shout outs to everybody here. Some people, hello, Saeed, Gibson, Angela, Duy Lam Nguyen from Vietnam, excellent, Karishma, Dwithun, sorry if I mispronounce names too, I apologize. Gutridis, Trang Hong, hello, Yasser, how are you? Where am I? So I am in Budapest, Hungary, in case you don't know. So this is going to be a live Q&A, and there you can see a picture of my family, and that is in Budapest. That is the Parliament building, which is right behind us. It is a gorgeous building, and Budapest is a lovely city, which I suggest that you visit if you ever want to go take a vacation. It's a good spot to be. And yes, I'm not, this video is not sponsored by the city of Budapest, but that is where we are at. So what I want to do again is take your questions. And the only thing that I would ask you is, if you're asking questions, to try and make them pretty specific. If it's a specific vocabulary word, if it's a specific word and say, how do you pronounce this word? Or if it's a specific grammar concept, just try to make them specific. Sometimes I'll get questions like, oh, can you go over all 12 verb tenses? Now, we've done that in another lesson, but I just want to be able to go through as many questions as I can. And I'm going to go ahead and say, if I don't get to your question, then I apologize first and foremost, but write it in the comments later on. Once the lesson gets posted, write to me in the comments, because we really try to answer as many questions as we can and respond to everybody in the comments, because that's just what we want to do to build and grow this community, because we're very happy about it. So the first question some of you may be wondering is, well, this was going to be a live lesson with the whole family. With my wife, Ioana, who has been on videos in the past. You've probably seen some of her lessons as well, if you are familiar with the channel, and our little baby girl, Emmy, which I'll just show you again. She's right here. Okay, so it is her little bear outfit. But before the lesson was beginning, she was starting to nod off, Emmy, so we put her to sleep. And that is a good word to know if you're wondering. That is a good phrasal verb, to nod off. And what it means is to start to go to sleep. So if somebody is nodding off, it means they're like, oh, they're almost falling asleep. So she was nodding off. We're like, okay, we'll put her in bed. She can sleep. And then you guys, you're just stuck with me. All right. So again, try to ask some questions. I'll answer as many as I can, and we'll just go through them. So Shihan says, hello, how are you? I am fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. But yeah, we're doing well. The fall season, I love fall. I love the change of the colors and just falling of the leaves. And it makes me feel like just something new is starting. Katie, hi from Germany. Hello, how are you? Let's see. What are good games I could do with my secondary students? Good question. So there are so many great games, I think, for learning English, because actually a lot of you out there, we hear from people and say, oh, I am an English teacher. And again, we love hearing from English teachers as well. One game that I would love to do just off the top of my head, which is which is an idiom. And if you don't know what that means, if something is off the top of your head, it just means you suddenly think of it. That you're not going to do any research, you suddenly think about it. This is more of an introduction game, but you can use it to have students practice certain grammar concepts. So something that I would do as an introduction is, depending on how big the class is, you put everybody in a chair. Everybody's sitting in a chair and the room is pretty open, and I wouldn't put it in a circle, but you would tell students one student has to be standing. And I would play the game as well. So basically it'd start out with, I'm the first person standing and everybody's sitting. And you have to say something true about yourself. And if it's also true for another person, then they have to find another seat. So for example, I'd be standing in front of the class and I would say, well, I have one brother. And if somebody else has a brother, then they must find another seat. Now, as people are moving around, I'm going to try and sit down, which means another person is left standing. And then they have to say something about themselves. So you can use it to practice different grammar concepts if you're using the present simple or maybe even present perfect. And somebody would have to consistently use the present perfect and then say, well, I have been to China. And then people that have been to China, they would switch seats. Or I have seen some movie. And then people that have seen it, they switch seats. So that is a fun game that you can use in a variety of ways to practice grammar, vocabulary, as well as a good introduction game. So that is one that I would recommend. Let's see, what else do we have? How do you pronounce months? All right. So again, this word, when you're talking about the months of the year, I'm emphasizing it a little there. If I'm speaking quickly, I'd say, how many months are in the year? It's almost like that O is more of a schwa sound, that months. When I say it, I think that you might not even hear the TH sound. It's just so quick. It almost sounds like an MUNTS, months. So again, this is one thing I think when you're like speaking quickly and people will say, there's 12 months out of the year. So that is something I would say naturally. I was born in the month of November. So I don't know it's up to you if you can hear that TH or not. It's very slight. But that is what I would say about that. What does every other day mean? Fabio, excellent. So if you're talking about every other day, basically it's talking about just every 2 days. So for example, every day would be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. For example, every other day would be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, and you're doing it basically every 2 days. Another way to look at it is that if I'm teaching a number of classes, all right, say that I teach 10 classes. So there's basically lesson 1 to 10. And I say you're going to get homework every other class, which would then mean if I give homework in the first class, then the next time they'll get homework is on the third class, and then the fifth class, and then the seventh, and it's every other. So you can use that in a variety of ways. Every other day, every other month, every other, every other lesson. And again, it just means you're kind of alternating, but basically by twos, all right? So let's see, what else do we have? Zakan, how to improve your writing skills? Honestly, I'll give a quick answer to this, and this is something that I truly promote and recommend is just to read. The best way, I think, to improve your writing is just to read, because when you're writing, it's all about, you're thinking about, well, what's the correct vocabulary uses? What is the correct syntax, the structure of the sentences that I'm going to use? When you're reading, you're able to see that. You're able to see the correct form. And I think that translates back into your writing when you then need to produce the language and try to write and think about, okay, which word should I use to express this thought, this feeling, this idea? So reading, I think, is just such a great way to improve all of your language skills, because it really helps build vocabulary. It helps you see the correct grammar structure. And then when you need to produce the language, which is when you write and when you speak, that you're more likely to be able to do that correctly. So that is what I'd say. That's my big hint to that. So Brown asks, what does douchebag mean? Well, that is just an insult. So if you say that to somebody, then you are insulting that person. So there's not like a, again, it does have another literal meaning, which I'm not going to explain, but you can Google that if you want to, but it's something that you might hear other people say to about another person, and it's a derogatory term. So let's see. Hello from Bangladesh. Hi. So again, if you guys are just joining us, I'm just taking your questions. You can ask me about vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, and I just want to spend a little time with you guys and kind of go over that and just be able to connect with you. So that is what we're doing. And this is good also just for your listening comprehension, to not just learn maybe about some more vocabulary and grammar, but just to see if you can follow along, because I think my speech is a little slower, but I also articulate and enunciate my speech, which is probably why it may be easier to understand what I'm saying. So again, this is great. If you guys can understand me, then that's perfect. I love hearing that because that means I am at your level. Let's see. Judison, hi from Haiti. Hello. Let's see. Kati says, hi, one question, please. What is more used in spoken English? Also, as well as, or to. It really depends on what part. So for example, to is an adverb of degree, and that's often going to be used to modify an adjective and say it's too hot, too cold. I was too tired to do something. So I think it's a very common word, but it's used differently than those other ones, I think, also or as well. For example, also is just more of a transition word when you're trying to add additional information. Like, yesterday I went to the supermarket. Also, I went roller skating. I don't know. I'm just giving more information. And in that case, I do think it's a very common transition word. One that I like to use that's a little more academic if you're giving a presentation or you're writing something formal would be in addition. In addition means the same as also, but I think also is more common, especially in spoken English. But if you want to be a little more professional in a professional setting, I like in addition. In addition's good. Let's see. When I'm trying, somebody said, when I am trying to speak fast, I make more mistakes, which I can avoid in writing. What's your advice? Thanks in advance. What I would say is that, again, just to keep doing it. Don't focus on the mistakes. I think the idea, as long as you keep getting exposure with reading and writing, especially if you're more of an advanced level, you are going to be able to just eliminate those mistakes over time without even realizing it. Like if you make a mistake with a preposition that follows an adjective, people will still understand, but if I were to hear that, I know, okay, that was a small mistake. As long as you're reading, as long as you're writing, and just keep practicing and listening and getting more exposure, you will then eliminate those mistakes. I would not encourage you to try and, again, I would just say try to speak naturally. Don't worry about trying to speak too fast, but don't worry about like, oh, I should slow down and then try to think about what I'm going to say. The reason why writing, people might make less grammar mistakes in their writing is because it is more of a reflective practice, that you're writing it down and then you're actually able to see it and change it if you realize something is wrong. And everybody does this. I do this all the time if I'm writing something and I go back and look at it and say, yeah, I want to use this word instead. Or maybe I see a typo and like, oh, I made this mistake right here. But as far as speaking, definitely I would always encourage you, just speak. Speak at your speed, speak at a speed that feels comfortable, and just do it without worrying about if you said something wrong or if you made a grammar mistake. Just keep moving forward, all right? That's what I would say for when it comes to speaking. Somebody asked, where is it? Because it means, Saeed says, what does grim mean? So if you describe something like a situation as grim, it basically means that the outlook is not positive. That the outlook is something, probably what will happen is not going to be a good thing, all right? So if I say, we are in a grim situation, then that means that you're in a situation that's not good, it's not positive, it's a difficult situation. So often I also think of maybe a doctor. If somebody is sick and they go to the hospital and they ask like, well, how is the patient doing? How are they doing? And the doctor says, it's grim. That would mean that, well, it's not a good thing. It's not positive. In the future, there could be some problems. So right now, if it's grim, it's not a good situation. So that is what I would say. Daniel asked, what does bamboozle mean? All right. So to bamboozle, usually you would bamboozle another person. So to bamboozle somebody would just mean to trick them. And often I think to trick them in a way in which you are kind of stealing something from them, you are taking something from them. So it's not like you would play a practical joke on somebody, a trick, and say, oh, I bamboozled you. No, you would be bamboozling somebody if you are tricking them out of money or something, or you're tricking them and they let you borrow their car and you're like, oh, I tricked them, I bamboozled them, I was able to get something. So that is what bamboozle would mean, to trick something in order to have something and actually obtain something. Jorge Lopez, I guess I could say English name, like kind of George. Hello, how can I improve my intonation? I've talked about this in some other lessons before, the concept of shadowing. And shadowing is when you listen to, it could be something from a movie, it could be something from one of our lessons. And you listen to it and then you try to say it the exact same way. And you try to say it right after they do so that it almost sounds like you're saying it at the same time. Think about singing a song. When you hear music, many people, if you're in the car, you like to sing along with the song. This is shadowing. You are basically trying to sing the song in the same way. You're trying to use the same emphasis, the same intonation, and you can use that not just with songs, but anything you hear. So if it's a phrase from a movie and somebody says it in a really unique way, you can try to do that and say it in the exact same way. Recently, we just had a lesson come out. I talked about some famous movie quotes, and in that lesson, I discussed using those movie quotes to practice your shadowing. If you have not seen the lesson, I will throw a link in there right now so you can check that out. And again, movies, it's a good way to practice shadowing. You hear something and you try to say it in the exact same way. In that case, I think it's best to take kind of shorter clips. It's not like you're going to hear a 1-hour presentation and then repeat everything that the person is saying. So I think if you have, for example, if it's a speech, maybe you have the transcript in front of you and you can read and follow along and you can try to say it the same way. That's another good way to practice. But shadowing is a good way to practice your pronunciation, your intonation, and your emphasis. Okay, so check out that lesson. How to take notes fast or dictate coding, how to take notes fast or dictate while listening. This is, again, I think more like a study habit skill about taking notes quickly when you're thinking about your listening comprehension. And I think that's going to be different for each individual. What I would tell students when they're taking notes, especially if you're doing it in a foreign language. When the place that I worked in at the school in California, the school was preparing students for university. So most of the students that came to our school, whatever country they were from, most of the students were anywhere from 18 to 26 years old. And the idea is that they were learning English, they were going to take the IELTS or the TOEFL and then attend university. And that's one of the things we would practice was note taking, because when you're in university, you're going to be sitting in a class, the professor's going to be up there giving a lecture and they're going to take notes. And if English is not your first language, I don't know, again, culturally how people in different countries would take notes, but I would just often tell them that when you're listening, you want to focus on those content words. Those are the nouns, the adjectives, the adverbs that, first off, they help put a picture in your mind. But if you're listening to those content words, then those are the most important things, and try to write those down. So we would practice this, and I would read them some kind of excerpt, or I would give a presentation about a topic, and we would practice taking notes. And the students would listen for those content words, write down as much as they could, and then afterwards I would give them a little quiz. So this is something that you could practice on your own if you find a website to help you practice your listening skills. And they say, listen to this and then answer the question. Well, while you're listening, try to take notes. Try to write down those content words, that important information, the names, the dates, the places, and then see if you can answer the question. So that is what I would recommend for taking some of those notes. Let's look at... So Sajid said, what is the difference between have to and must? Please give some examples. Both of them, have to and must, are modals of obligations, something you have to do. It's an obligation. You're required to do that. Something you must do. It's also an obligation, and it's something that you another way to put it, you have to do. I would say that I think have to is probably a little more casual. You will hear it more in colloquial speech. People, in just their everyday conversation, I think they'll talk about things they have to do. Oh, like today, well, I have to go to work at this time, and then afterwards, I have to go to my friend's house because I'm going to help them with something. And you talk about things you have to do. Must, I think, is a little more formal. It's probably something you would see it a little more in writing, a little more professional when you're talking about things that one must do. Or so if you're reading something, you might come across that, but both of them have the same meaning. It is a modal of obligation. Hi, hello from Siberia. Excellent. Awesome. Let's see. What else do we have? I like how some of you guys are chatting with each other and answering questions. And please help each other out. I would always encourage you. Sometimes it's moving quickly and I miss some questions. But if you see somebody ask a question and you know the answer, help them out. Answer the question. Share your knowledge of the English language. I would definitely encourage you to do that. That is also another good way to practice your skills, because I would do that with students all the time as well. I would have something like, the student is actually going to teach the class, and they would have to study either some topic or maybe even some grammar concept. And then they would come to the front and give a presentation and actually try to teach the grammar. And in teaching the grammar, that means they have to learn and understand it. So again, it's a great way to practice your skills. David says, hello, how can I improve my listening? Again, I think it's just to keep getting exposure to the language. I could tell you, listen to TV shows, movies, listen to music. But the other thing I would say is, because when people are listening, like most of you are listening to me right now, it is passive listening, which means that you're just listening to me talk, you're listening to me give information, but you don't have to do anything if you don't want to. I would say if you want to improve your skills, it's good to get some passive listening, whether you're watching a TV show or movie or listening to music, but also try to do some active listening as well. And actually try to have something you have to do afterwards. So for example, I just talked about listening to some presentation and then answering questions. And you could take notes if you want to. But if you have to answer questions, if you have to do some action, then that means it's an active listening exercise. So I would say don't just listen passively, try to listen actively as well. And we've done some of those lessons before on our channel, where we try to make it an active listening exercise where you will listen to me say something, and then you actually have to try and answer the question. You write something in the comments. You actually have to do something. Recently, I did a lesson about trying to listen for vocabulary and then put it into context. And I took some of these words that were a bit obscure. And if you don't know what obscure means that it's not common and it's rather unknown. Now, the idea was that I don't want you to say, oh, you have to know these vocabulary words. I was trying to find words that many people have not heard of. And what I wanted to do, the listening practice, was to listen to it and then try to put the word in context and say, oh, I understand the word because I listened to the sentence and I understand everything else. So if you haven't seen that lesson right there, I'm going to write it and I'll just put it in quotes, listening listening practice. But that is a good way to get some active listening practice, all right, is to do some of those those exercises. Let's see, what else do we got? I want to know the meaning, Anxingba, I want to know the meaning of blaze of glory. So I'm guessing you may be asking me that because of the famous song by Bon Jovi, Blaze of Glory. So I'm just going to use that as an example. But it is another expression in English if somebody says, I'm going to go down in a blaze of glory. So if they're talking about a blaze of glory, it kind of means like one final fight that you're going to give it your all, and kind of it's going to be glorious, all right? And it's often used as that phrase, to go down in a blaze of glory. It basically means that you're going to lose, you're not going to succeed, you're going to do it anyway. You're going to fight, and if something happens, if it goes wrong, then it goes wrong. So in that case, when they say, somebody goes down in a blaze of glory, it could be a fight in which they say, I'm going to die, and I'm going to go out until the end. I'm going to go out fighting. Or it could be something where maybe somebody has to give a presentation, and they're not ready for it. They're not prepared. They don't know what they're going to say. And instead of running away, they might say, I'm just going to do it anyway. And if I go down in a blaze of glory, so what? I don't care. I'm going to go down in a blaze of glory. I'm just going to say it, and people are going to boo me. They're going to get upset, but you do it anyway. All right. So that is the way I would define a blaze of glory. All right. Let's see. Some people, excellent. I love how encourage people, help each other with some answers. Excellent. I see people helping each other out. So let's see. Where is your kid at the moment? Before I told you guys, remember I said at the very beginning, because we were going to have this be like a family Q&A, and I said right before we started, Emmy was starting to nod off. And do you guys remember from the people that were there at the beginning, what does it mean to nod off? If somebody is nodding off, it means that they're kind of like, they're starting to fall asleep. So she was starting to fall asleep, so we said, okay, I don't want to wake her up and put her in front of the camera. So she is sleeping right now. That is where she is. Let's see. I'm going to be an English teacher, but I still can't speak fluently, which makes me sad most of the time. Zilan, I'd say, again, just keep practicing, keep getting exposure to the language. I think that's awesome that you're going to be an English teacher. And again, I think the more exposure you get, the more comfortable you get, the better, the better your skills will be, but also as a teacher, I think as well. I think it goes hand in hand, because I think that when I first started teaching, even though I was a native speaker and it's like, wow, I know English, I think I was a pretty terrible teacher at the beginning. I'll go ahead and say that. There was a lot that I had to learn. And I did. Over the past 15 years, I think I've improved. I've gotten better. I understand teaching and methodology a lot more. And it's all part of the process. All right. So Luna, explain the possessive cause. I'm not really sure what you mean, I guess, by possessive cause. I don't know if you mean possessive clause. I don't know if you could give an example, or if it's something, again, if I can't answer your question, or I don't know, if I don't understand, one resource that I always say is just try to Google it. Just throw it into Google. Usually you have sites that always come up with explanations and examples. It is such a useful resource to use, is just to Google it. So I'm not really sure exactly what it is. And I know that probably one thing that's frustrating in English is that there are different words to identify different things. For example, you could talk about the present continuous verb tense. Well, some people call it the present progressive. It's the same thing, but they use different names to identify that verb tense. And I think that can be confusing for learners, and it can be frustrating for teachers as well, because I've had that some mix-up before when you're trying to talk about something and I'm saying the present progressive, and somebody else like, wait, the present continuous. Why are you saying something different? Let's see. Do you have some rules? The schwa, can you? Says, so if you guys don't know what the schwa sound is, It is just an unstressed sound in English. And it's an unstressed syllable. And it most of the time, sometimes it has no sound at all. It's omitted, but oftentimes it has like an sound. Just that And I think a great example would be the word banana. All right? Banana. So it's 3 syllables, banana, and that last one, that na, because it's B-A-N-A, it's only the vowel, the letter A, but that last one has that schwa sound. It's unstressed. Banana. And it has that sound. So we actually did a lesson before, if you guys want to look at it, on the schwa sound. But again, this is where I think you can study words that specifically have the schwa to be able to identify them, but then you really just need to practice with more listening and more speaking and actually trying to say these words out loud and produce the sound. Let's see, we have, some good questions. I know that I am going to need to cut this a little short. If I haven't gotten to your question, please just write them in the chat. I will try to get to them, but every month, this is something I want to do. I want to do a Q&A. I want to take as many questions as I can. It's great for you guys to learn. It's great for you to practice your listening skills. And I just want to be able to do this as much as we can to be able to communicate with you guys directly. So one thing I want to say before we end, if you guys do enjoy what we do, if you enjoy our lessons, please show us some love. You can check out our Patreon page. We have some cool rewards. It's another great way to connect with us, to interact with us. And it really does. It goes a long way in helping us continue to do this and put out all of these free lessons on YouTube for anybody who wants to see them. And we try to do 2 lessons a week. We do 1 recorded lesson, which we post, and then these live lessons as well. So you can check out our Patreon page if you want to show us some love and be a patron. If not, that's okay. No problem. Don't worry about it. So thank you guys so much for being here with me. Again, if I didn't get to your question, write to me in the comments. Once the lesson gets posted, please hit that like button. If you enjoy these Q&A sessions, if you find them useful, if they are helpful, then let me know. That's the way that you can tell me, is by hitting that like button. So I think, okay, this is something I need to continue doing because learners find value in actually being able to ask me questions directly and have me answer them. Write to me in the comments. Check out our social media, which is, it's up here. Yes, we're active on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And yeah, just thank you guys so much for being here. Give some more shout outs to Ishra. Thank you. Sajid, Daniel, Miss Reluctant, Saeed, Angela. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you next time. So long.